is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's kitchen time again. Just had a bit of a giggle actually. I was just watching other people's videos. I was just watching Libby out in a fairy garden, which I like. But I think I've got fairies. They don't live in the grow room, but I'm sure they visit. Because every now and again when I have a major watering session like yesterday, I'm sure there's more orchids there than there was before. I don't know how else they can get there. Dratted little fairies. Anyway, serious. I'm repotting, so I've got my hydrogen peroxide, 3%. Don't use a percentage higher than that, you'll burn things. The idea is to burn little things, not big things like your plant. Okay, I keep that in a dark bottle so that it doesn't go off. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. If you expose it to light, it becomes H2O, and we all know what that is. And it's not a lot of good at killing things. It's alright for washing them off, I suppose. Anyway, that goes to one side. I've got my skizzers in the rubbing alcohol, 70%. That's sterilising those, because I know where they've been. And as far as media and all that is concerned, I haven't made my mind up yet. But this is what I'm going to deal with. Where's my flipping camera? So I know I'm going to be working down there, but this has got a long spike. This is Miltoniopsis World Cup. Yeah? Would we all agree those are beautiful blooms? Yes, we probably would. So I'd like to see some more of them. So to allow me to see some more, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the ones I've got. I can hear the sharp intake of breath from here. I don't care. You have to bear in mind it had 3 blooms. Let me just get these little clips off. Oh, that's one of the ones that doesn't like to come off. Okay, one's already gone. That one's now on its way out. That leaves 1. I need to look after the plant, so I'm happy that that is off. And hopefully we'll get those again one day. Quite a long way off though. Right, let's play what's in my pot. Hopefully some roots. On a plant this size, under normal rules, Roger rules, I shouldn't have bought it. My rules for Miltoniopsis are getting strong healthy plants with good root systems. Well, I don't know what's in this pot, it's a dark one. It's probably been in there a little while because it's got live moss growing on the top, but what I'm after is these 2 little growths. That's the future of the plant, not this pseudo bulb. That's already bloomed, that's done its job, yeah? And the reserves in that bulb are now helping get these 2 off the ground. But what's stopping them getting off the ground are these sheaths. If any new roots come out, they're delicate on Miltoniopsis. They'll follow that sheath up and end up being aerial roots. And on a Miltoniopsis, that's not ideal. You'll have a hell of a job keeping them hydrated if they live in the air. They need to get down in the pot. So let's see what we got. Anything from something to nothing, no doubt. Well, it doesn't want to come out. Sometimes that's a good sign. Right, first impression, I'm over the moon. I've got something to work with. That had quite a lot of air in the pot. Yeah, there's gaps. There's also old roots that have died. Well, that's how orchids work. It's very rare that you get an orchid that's been in a pot a while, and when you take it out, every single root is still alive. That's not common. If you've got some like that, well, flipping well done. They naturally lose some roots and grow some more. It's a process. It's how they work. Right, with the good roots around the outside, I want the moss off, because it'll only help algae get going, which I don't want. Now I do have an initial problem with this. Those new growths are still a little bit small, but I bet if I get down behind these sheaves there are already signs of new ones. Yep, see, there's new ones there, and what are they doing? They're pointing upwards. Yeah, well, that's not where they need to be. Do you know, I was just going to pull that off thinking it's a sheath. It's actually a pair of roots, I believe, that have fused together where they were stuck inside that sheath. Now this is the awkward one. Well, that came off a lot easier than I thought it would. That's good. That's one side done. Now this one's not quite so easy. There we go. Look, see the flipping roots sticking straight up in the air? That's what I'm trying to stop. Oh, these are coming off nicely. Now I did water this before I started. Look, that new growth's rotted. So I've lost one already. Yeah? There's no point in leaving it there, it's rotten. So we're down to one now. And the chances are this old pseudo bulb will now not produce another new growth. So from 2 we're down to 1. And that probably was lost for no other reason than the sheath stayed soaking wet. There's a wicking process, yeah? It's natural, and under normal circumstances with good air circulation and everything else that's going on, it doesn't matter. But in anything less than those sort of conditions, if the sheath stays wet, when a growth is incredibly young, like what that one was, there is a tendency to get a bit of rot at the base. Yeah. So I'll give that a good clean up and I'll be back. Okay, there we go. Basically some bark is stuck to good roots, so that bark's staying there. These roots are delicate and brittle. Some roots are quite floppy and bendy. Just a minute, I've forgotten something. Got to rinse. I'm not a trusting person. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm washing any residual hydrogen peroxide off. Now in theory it's exposed to the light and it's been deactivated, it's done its job, but as I said, I'm not a trusting person. There is a slight burning effect with hydrogen peroxide, and I still go on the theory if you leave it there and it's still working, it could be doing some harm to delicate roots like this. Right, first off, now I've had a closer look, we have a bonus. We lost a new growth on that side, and I've said so we're now down to 1. Guess what? There is a little tiny sign of something growing there. Oh, actually the leaf's in the way, isn't it? Let's see if I can get it. It's there on the end of my finger. It's tiny, yeah? But whatever it is, it ain't roots. It might not make it. It might be too small. But I've got to keep the base of this plant out of the media. It's got to sit on it, and that's important because a part of it had started to rot. Yeah? So I've got to try and avoid this time. Okay, that pot's a little larger than I would like. Yeah? But the next one down is far too small. So how do you make a big pot into a smaller pot? Put lots of crocking in the bottom and don't plant the plant too high up. That way you get a shallower, okay, albeit wider, but you get a shallower root run. Now I'm going to have to play games with this plant on the grounds I have no moss, and ideally I'd be planting this in small bark and sphagnum moss. That's what I like to use for finer root systems that need to not dry out completely and take a little while to dry out as opposed to dry fast. These do not need to dry fast, they like being moist. Okay, so I'm going to cheat. What I'm going to do is start with small bark. There's a good reason for that. It's all I've got. And until I get some more decent sphagnum moss, well, I haven't got any. I can't use what I haven't got. But the plan is to use the small bark, and then when I get the moss, I will actually gently shake the pot on its side and tip some of the bark out, and then I'll replace it with a bark and moss mix. So it'll only be at the top of the pot. You know, obviously I'm not going to take the plant whole right out and repot it again. Disturbing these once is bad enough, let alone doing it twice. So I'm just no pressing down, delicate roots. The watering, with the small bark, the watering will sink that bark down and settle it. If I start pressing, I'm going to start cracking, bending roots and losing root tips. And on things like Miltoniopsis, they're flipping precious. They're slow to regenerate a root system. Once they start regenerating a root system into a media they're happy with, which is a non-acidic media, they'll take off like a rocket. It's just getting them to make that start. So a very, very gentle press. How firm is that? It is quite firm. I'm still going to stake it because I don't want this to wobble. That delicate new growth is right down in there. So I'm just gently teasing the bark away from where it is. I don't want it buried. There we go. And I don't want this wobbling around, so I am going to stake it. It just helps hold it still. I mean, once the roots get a hold in the media, the stake element becomes irrelevant. You can take it off if you want, especially if you don't like the look of it. Right, let's go. I always, where I've got a pseudo bulb that narrows at the top, and whether it's got leaves or not, that is the place for me to tie, because it's the only place I'm not going to squash a leaf, if you see what I mean. And also, because it's narrow at that point, it will allow me to get quite a firm hold on the stake without garrotting the flipping plant. And I always tie this to the stake, not to the plant. So I wrap round the plant, and then where I want the knot to be, round the back, is where I put the knot. Where the knot's against the stake. Also looks tidier around the back of the plant than round the front. This is not tight. All I'm doing is holding that pseudo bulb to the stake. Quite honestly, the stake's moving a bit, but once I water it, it'll settle in. Right, here we go then. Tiny little Miltoniopsis. It's not ever going to be a giant Miltoniopsis. They do come in different sizes. This is always going to be a miniature. So, you know, that may be the full size of the pseudo bulbs for this particular type. Remembering it's a hybrid, so you don't really know what's gone into it. I could probably find out if I could be bothered, but as it's got a name, I don't need to be bothered. So let me just give that a tap. Yeah, and it will get a good soak simply because of the type of plant. If that was a Phalaenopsis or Cattleya or something like that that needs a full wet-dry cycle, because I watered this morning, the roots are already hydrated, but that bark in its new state will suck that moisture out of them roots, so I need to water it. I also need to put it in a separate place because I'll probably need to water it not tomorrow but the next day, and probably every 2 to 3 days for a while that bark is new, because this stuff dries flipping fast. It really does. Right, that's it. Let's see what happens. See if that tiny little growth will actually pull on. Yeah. Right, that's that one done. I'm playing the what's in my pot game. Do you know how many roots I cut off? 0. On inspection, having cleaned them off, the number of dead roots was next to nothing. And to get at those, I could start poking around and possibly damaging the good ones. So in this case, with this type of orchid, they can stay there because there was only a couple. Right, we'll see how we get on with that one. I don't want to lose that. That was a cheap plant. But as I've said, you know, with blooms like that, I want to see them again. It's a smashing Miltoniopsis. Beautiful patterning, beautiful colour, and I want to see them again. The only way that's going to happen is for these new growths, or growth, depending on that little one, to push on, mature and possibly bloom. Now it may well not bloom on the next growth. You might have to wait for a third one, but we shall see. Anyway, that's that one done. See you again. Thanks for visiting my channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are some others you could watch below. You can just click on the thumbnails. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel. You can use the link below. I post on most days, so hope to see you again soon. Thanks for stopping by.